Thanks very much, Jason. I'm going to talk about enabling the Joint Force Authority decision-making and really explaining more about the how we've gone about our business. Put that in presentation. Okay. Explain a bit more of the how and how we're actually trying to implement the FPR vision. I'll do that by explaining the force design strategy and continuing the theme of how we try to link strategy, capability and resources. I'll talk through some of the prioritisation approaches, in particular about how we go about method selection and the important piece about options coherency. And I'll finish with thinking about how we build this evidence base that you've heard a couple of times about already, and decision support and what we're calling the force design body of knowledge. So very quickly, to continue the theme, we're about developing capability options to achieve the military strategy within the resources that are available. And it's really about presenting affordable options to government. Jason's mentioned this as one of our key challenges, building common understanding, and it's a key challenge in the evidence chain, understanding the missions, the objectives and the key assumptions. And it's very difficult to achieve this common understanding across such a large organisation that we have. And some of the assumptions that have gone into the production of the white paper about what levels of discretion there are in particular missions, what's Australia's role, what role are there in coalition contributions, what the actual threats are, assumptions about concurrency and precursor missions, the duration of missions, and there's always that temporal aspect as well about when something might likely to occur. Now these are just the assumptions that stem from the strategy. There's also similar assumptions that come from the resourcing side about capability scope and really linking with capability managers. So prioritisation method selection is really about understanding the problem in the first place, what data is available, and understanding the limitations of the particular methods which you may be presented with. And there are multiple perspectives to the problems, across programs, including all of the enablers from top to bottom, as we've heard in this, using the program approach. And you quickly realise that there's no real silver bullet for prioritisation. Some methods may be more attractive, but also they lack the breadth and fidelity of data to be able to be applied. What I'm going to use is an example of a multi-criteria decision analysis example, which we've used to support a range of activities. And I'd emphasise in going through this that MCDA is one step, it's not the end in itself. Now, we've heard a couple of times already about the role of force analysis, and this is really where linkages from all of the joint force analysis work that happens, but also the work in the capability manager space can feed, and the innovation area feeds into that options development area, but also into the coherency analysis piece, which I'll talk about shortly. But before we start with the actual prioritisation activity, we want to know what the problem is, and that will really define how we want to present the final options over there on the right-hand side of the big arrow. Those options will be developed based on the analysis and the evidence that comes, when you'll hear about some of this shortly. And all of these options will be developed across the 40 programs, as one example. They need to be costed and phased, so there's not just utopia happens in 2030. There's actually has to be a transition plan in these programs, and that's one of the power of that program approach. But we do need to understand the resource component and the context, and any assumptions that have been made, and the link back to the strategy about what the criteria we're going to use are, which ideally they're mutually exclusive. The key step in the multi-criteria decision analysis place is the evaluation step. And this is where we have a bunch of stakeholders come together to make value judgments comparing apples and oranges, to understand the value of alternatives, and also do weighting across different criteria. And that's where you traditionally see multi-criteria decision analysis being used. But it doesn't end there. That's only really the start of understanding the problem. The big piece is actually in this force options generation, where we actually start looking at sets of options, balance of investment across capabilities, and where we need different other tools and decision support to help us get there. Now, I'm now going to break into more detail about the options generation piece to give you a feel for where we're going to. Now, there's a number of viewpoints to be cognizant of here. Warfighting, portfolio management, and understanding the national support base. And people tend to have one or a couple of those views, but they never really get brought together. And that's one of the real challenges, is none of them are completely, should be looked at in isolation, and that's our role not to. So at the top end in the warfighting area, we're really talking about mainly operations analysis methods. But down in portfolio management and the national support base, you're really looking at more management science and engineering techniques. Now, all these areas need to be connected, and key things are defence elements and products, which are common threads which help us link between the warfighting and the portfolio management areas. When we put these three views together, we would need some sort of combined, or what I'm going to coin the phrase, temporal net assessment, which is really understanding these trade-offs that have to be made, provide a affordable option to government which gets the tick at the end of the day. Now I'm going to break this net assessment piece up to give you an idea of where we are thinking, and this is a concept of temporal net assessments. I'm going to warn you, there's a lot of detail behind this, and it's a busy slide. And this is just a conceptual model that needs input from a number of areas to build it and to actually implement it. This follows through these views from the previous slide, so the warfighting view on the top half and the investment program on the bottom half. And we've maintained the view at the top of the strategic objectives, where we have the stream and mission objectives or goals. Now you see here we have a temporal horizon across naught to however many years you need to go to. You have your existing resources in your warfighting domain, and down below you have a range of programs, projects, products that are going to deliver or result in a change to the existing resources that you have, or deliver new resources, or divest of something. A key element in this temporal net assessment is actually across the middle layer, where they join up, understanding what the gaps and opportunities are, and starting to give you a risk profile over time. Supporting this is going to be industry assessments and also a program cost estimation. I'll come back to resources a bit shortly. But we're really about understanding what alternative program options are, and Michael's mentioned in divestment, and I've deliberately put it in there as well. There can be changes in these programs to deliver outcomes, different ways to achieve the end, and there's also alternative resource plans that need to be considered. And together, they come together and start bringing a picture of what the gaps and risks are, which then flows into some sort of greater understanding of what our blue force ability is, and also the risks that may be inherent in any particular option set. So on that left-hand side, we've got an understanding of what those options are. We can move into looking at cost profiles, which are really having an understanding of coherency across these over time, particularly focused on the forward estimates over the decade and beyond. Understanding where the current baseline plan was and where the adjustment options might be, and where particular options are going to place pressure on the budget. And this is all about building that business case to go back to government and either say, here are the affordable options, or what the impact of one option might be that actually would justify an increase in the bench budget, or maintaining the existing spend plan. To do all this really means you need to capture the data, the assumptions, and it brings me to the final part of talking about the force design body of knowledge. Oh, sorry. That's implementing that cycle. So we heard a fair bit about single source of truth. It's probably a bit of an overused term. But what we're trying to do is align with the Enterprise Information Management Program. And there is a Joint Force Authority Decision Support Initiative under that EIM program, which is looking at supporting the Joint Force and Authority with methods and tools to implement this process. Some of the objectives are actually trying to move away from having large documents to more data. Reducing which intent there is to reduce the ambiguity and interpretation of language, improve the data quality and the governance of it, capturing decisions and the assumptions and direction, that specific direction that's been given, and maintaining that rationale for decision. We don't think it's actually there's a single bullet out there. We need a suite of tools. But just taking this one step further, we have in the centre the baseline plan and investment portfolio within this capability bubble. We're also about looking at what these options are. This includes integration options. Integration isn't free, and we have to factor that in as well. There's always links from the strategy and resources, and let's talk about codifying what the strategic objectives and the assumptions have been, and maintaining a resource register and a register of what options have been considered. This is about being able to produce a warm base rather than have to try and spin it up in the last 6 months when a major review team gets stood up. And this helps us monitor the validity of those assumptions so that when we are called upon to do an agile update, we can do it. Now let's just look into my final slide here. And this is a look inside that capability bubble. And I need to mention that it's closely linked with the integration and portfolio management areas. And we are building upon CDMRT, which is the Capability Development Management and Reporting Tool. It's evolved considerably from where some people may understand it to have been, and it provides us a mechanism to be able to link the strategy and warfighting views with that portfolio management view and capture those assumptions. There will be business needs, that's to the side here, for additional online visualisation and decision support, as well as the need to export or import data to do more offline, deeper modelling and simulation and analysis. We do anticipate the need for industry and academia to be able to support the plans we have outlined here today. Just in closing, hopefully I've explained how we've trying to link the strategy, capability and resource problem, capture the assumptions and produce affordable plans. We've given you a bit of an overview of the prioritisation approach that we've embarked upon and tried to show how analysis from capability managers and innovation in industry can link in there. And I've finished with some of the evidence, how we're trying to build that evidence base to give us more transparency and build upon that maturing portfolio management methodology.